that I've been taught when I was at school. I'm an investor, a business owner, and a money educator. Understand it better. Compound interest, cash flow, budgeting, investments, recover from debt. No one explained to me, put your money to work. It's about normalising the conversation. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Money Mechanics podcast. It's Sarah here, and today I am very excited to be joined by Tanya Ibberson, who is also known as the financial wing woman. Now, I've followed Tanya for a number of years, actually, probably about 5 years, 4 or 5 years, I think. Probably we've been connected online, and I love what she does. She is a trauma-informed transformation coach, qualified accountant with, I think, is 28 years experience as an accountant, if I remember correctly. And she now helps women to budget and manage debt, but not just that. What she also does is help them to rewrite their story, rewrite their life after things like financial abuse or divorce. So, Tanya, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
What is your earliest money memory?
So I do remember this quite distinctly, and I remember the rage that hit me with this memory, and it's quite irrational talking about it now, but we're going to share it anyway. So when my brother was born, I would have been not quite 3, 2.5-ish, and I remember people coming to visit and putting silver coins in the palm of his hand, like, you know, days old baby. And I remember just sitting there and like, oh yeah, okay, where's mine? Why is he getting that and I'm not getting that? So that's my very first money memory, and just feeling just the injustice of the situation. So that there's the mind of a not quite 3-year-old thinking, hello. Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
The jealousy, the sibling rivalry is starting.
How do you think that has formed who you are today in relation with money, or impacted it?
Well, I don't know. I do have a really big sense of things needing to be fair, and there needing to be justice in the way that things work, which goes head to head with my accountant role and the career, because fundamentally I look at the tax system, I look at the way that the rules work, and I don't agree with a lot of them. You know, they're not fair. So I don't, you know, maybe that was part of the lesson I was meant to learn, was to work through all of that. But yeah, 28 years is 28 years, and just makes me feel so old. Gosh, to be doing that for so damn long. Well, you know, why am I still in there? But no, it's well, I believe we're always on the path that we're meant to be and learn the lessons. And I wouldn't be where I am if I hadn't had that first. So yeah, it's all part of it.
So tell me, what actually is a trauma-informed transformation coach?
So the trauma-informed bit is really important, and the trauma-informed element on the training was probably something that I did before I trained with ICF from a coaching point of view, because when you're dealing with people that have had trauma in their life, big trauma, little trauma, and it doesn't have to be parents were made redundant and they lost our house, mum and dad got divorced. Trauma can be standing in the queue with mum at the checkout and she can't pay for the shopping and she's just like panicking. That could, you know, it can be big T, little t. But when you're dealing with people and you're helping them to come to terms with what's happened, or you're trying to help them find a way through and manage, it's so important not to re-traumatize them. So to be trauma informed means that I can come at things from an understanding. There's no judgment. I think from the length of time that I've done the professional side of what I've done, there isn't anything I haven't seen pretty much anyway. But then also when you throw in the personal side as well, and then the training to go with it, you have to go in with your eyes wide open. You don't just go in, oh, I heard this happen to you, tell me about that, because you can end up literally opening Pandora's box and leaving someone in a state that they just don't know how to cope with. And that's just really bad form. So it's, I think more people, I think people being trauma informed, that should be in every profession really. But it was an important part for me to go in that, do it in that order almost. So sort of financial coach, the trauma informed, and then on from there.
Why was that important to you?
I think because I'd attempted to have coaching, therapy and counselling through things and bits and pieces in my life. And I know how it feels to be on the receiving end of somebody who does a really bad job, you know, like a cowboy type trying to, well, we'll just talk through it, or we'll just do this. And whilst it might be true that things often don't feel as bad as when they were happening, that doesn't mean that that's always the case. You know, if you're reliving something, or you're trying to run a business, or you're trying to raise a family, and you're constantly feeling on the back foot all the time, you can do a lot more damage. So you've really got to be really careful working with people on that respect.
Fair enough. So being an accountant, you've followed the financial the rules, let's say, for a long time.
Yeah.
And now you're helping other people to improve their finances and become financially stable, so you're independent. What kind of moved from one place to the other? Okay, a very short interruption of the episode, so I want you to get back to listening. I just wanted to remind you that the Money Mechanics weekly newsletter is completely free, and we'll send this out to you every week. All you've got to do is find the link in the show notes and get signed up. When we send this out to you, this weekly newsletter is going to include things that will help you to become a better money mechanic. It could be things like what's happening in the markets, things like budgets, how that's going to impact you. And I'm also going to share a lot of insight into what I'm doing in my own portfolio and in the portfolios of the guests we've got on the podcast, to really just help you understand what you could do differently to make your money work as best as it can for you. Make sure you go and find that link and get signed up.
I think on the coaching side, what interested me more dealing with clients on the accounting side of things was I could tell people, you need to do A, you need to do B, you need to budget, you need to plan for your tax bill, you need to do all of these things. But I could see people that weren't doing it, and rather than taking it personally and thinking, these people just aren't listening to me, I must be really bad at my job, I just got really curious about, but you know this bill isn't going away, right? You know that the HMRC know where you live. Tell me why you're not preparing for this and making life easier for yourself. So I can do the rules, I can do the 1, 2, 3 bits, but I was more interested in what people found difficult about running a business and doing all of the things and keeping on the straight and narrow when it came to a tax point of view. So things sort of shifted around 5 years ago, probably around the time that I met you, was when I sort of had my eyes a little bit more open to, just because I've always done that doesn't mean that's what I always need to do.
Okay, interesting. So do you think that everybody should want to strive, or everyone should strive for financial independence?
Oh, yeah, without a shadow of a doubt, absolutely. And one of my biggest, like a huge value of mine is that everybody should have the choice to say, they should have the mindset and the means to be able to walk away or to say no. And sometimes you can have the money and still stay. So if we were talking about a controlling relationship, for example, if you've got an inherent belief that it's your fault that you're in that situation, that have no other options, then you can, I've had clients that have been very wealthy and had access to funds, but have still stayed in that situation. So the two have to go hand in hand. This is not just about having access to funds. This is about knowing that you can build something else. So the two go really helpfully together almost. The coach and the accounting it made sense for me to combine the two rather than just not want to die on the hill of being an accountant. It was like, do you know what? I can do these two together. This is actually a really good mix.
So Tanya, why do you specialise with working with women?
So I have been asked this a few times, actually. It's not that I don't specifically exclude any particular gender. I work with men as well. I think as a gender, typically looking back culturally, generationally, we are hugely disadvantaged. We almost have to fall into that stereotype because of what examples that we're following, which just falls into this whole money mindset, this learning type of thing, because we aren't taught this sort of stuff in schools. We follow what we know because we can't be what we can't see. And quite often the examples that are set for us are those of mother, grandmother. So as women, 60 years ago, you couldn't get a mortgage on your own. You needed to have a male person stand guarantor to borrow any money, to own any sort of property. So we've got a lot of catching up to do, in terms of where we stand from a financial playing field. And quite apart from anything else, I'm a woman myself, so I can really relate to anybody coming into that situation. I've been in a controlling relationship, in an abusive relationship, so I know how that feels. So I've got empathy for people coming in from that point of view as well. So it's I don't want to say that I'm picking a specific, but typically those are the clients that come to me.
So I totally get where you're coming from on the women being on the back foot. And I wrote about this in my book because actually, we have had less time to play with money. And when I talk to clients about,
sure.
I talk to a lot of clients, they say, oh, my husband just does all that for me. And I'm like, I'm married and I have a husband, but we agree that we should both be financially independent rather than us being collectively independent. I think for us, it's really important, and for everybody I speak to, clients and so on, the importance of being independently financially stable so that you can come together and be financially, collectively stable. What are your thoughts on that?
A powerhouse. Well, I couldn't agree with you more. I think I said earlier on that every woman should have the means and mindset to say no thank you to a situation. So I think it's really important coming into a relationship that you can be whole if something were to happen. And I'm not advocating for divorce. This is not like a feminist go girls or anything like that. But it is very much you just don't know what's going to be around the corner. So just in terms of finances generally, in terms of, unless you're having those really, really open conversations around attitudes to debt and spending and saving and investing and how long term is long term and all of those sorts of things, it's important that you've got some say, some sway in the direction of things are going as a couple. And where kids are involved as well, I think it's really important to set that example of that being the norm, because again, it just typically that certainly wasn't the situation that my parents were in. And when they divorced, my mum had nothing. We shopped at Aldi and we bought 9p tins of beans, and that we lived on that. That was our reality for quite a while, because my mum didn't work, she didn't earn, so we were reliant on the state essentially. And then by the time you've paid the mortgage and everything, there just wasn't anything left. So I think it's important to set that as an example and to just know that you've got a choice.
I totally agree. And one of the things you said earlier is about we are not being taught this stuff in school. And, I certainly wasn't sat down in school and taught about debt and interest rates and credit cards and how that all works. And I know that, my parents did the best they could with the information they had, but they also weren't really taught about investing, about how to really make money work. So do you think that there is, I think I know the answer to this, but do you think there's anything missing from the education system in terms of finances? And if so, what's the biggest thing you think is missing?
I think just recognizing that it is part of the everyday. So beyond the whole, if I give you this, I get that in return. Like you just said about investing and paying debt and understanding what debt is and how you get into it in the first place. As I'm not saying and shouting debt's a bad thing, it's a dirty word, but you have to go in it understanding and knowing what it is and then what happens once you have it, to be able to work that situation back. Schools teach nothing of this. And I mean, my eldest daughter, she's 21 now. So when she was in the sixth form, they did like a day, one day of this is what this is and this is what this is. But it was just so very, very basic. And she came home and said, I could tell you all about Pythagoras theorem. I could tell you all about quadratic equations. And I am never for the entire rest of my life ever going to use any of this stuff again. Why haven't I been talked to about mortgages and interest rates and foreign currency and how all of these different things interact? Because it's part of such a bigger picture. Having an opinion on politics and what's going on in the economy right now, so many people are just following what they're reading in the papers or what they've overheard someone say in the pub rather than actually having an informed opinion. And we can't lead with our feet if we don't have that knowledge. We're just guessing and we end up then being stuck. We end up literally literally being herded collectively as a nation, which is, I think that's what's happening now, and it's terrifying, frankly.
Yeah, and I think, this definitely isn't a podcast for political debates, but I think everybody is acutely aware that there's a lot happening at a political level. And when you are living life right now and things are more expensive and interest rates are going up, and to be able to buy a house, it is much harder, and all of these things, I think we have to be eyes wide open in the way we approach stuff. And I was having a conversation last weekend about how it's our own responsibility to become educated around these things, and we have to have the desire to want to learn it if we stand a chance of change. Why do you think people are frightened of learning about this stuff? Because they are, and people pull back from getting into the trenches with money. Why do you think that is?
I think because we've got too much, whether we've got an education or a proper understanding of money is irrelevant. We still have a history with money. We still have those stories. We have experience of how it feels when someone comes home from work and they're in a really bad mood because of something that's financially driven. There's a leak in the roof and we can't pay for it. The youngest child's come home with the knees through their school trousers, and that, for Christ's sake, that's the third pair I worn. Not even got to Christmas yet. We've all got that. We've all got those experiences and those feelings around money. So whether we want to learn or not, it has to feel safe, because it's one thing to have a desire and I want to feel financially free, but we're not taught how to work that out yet. So you can't just say, I want financial freedom. You have to be able to say, well, but how much is freedom? How much, what does that look like to you? But because we've got this baggage around money quite often, that needs dealing with, and that is what will keep people from picking up a textbook, or maybe not a textbook in these day and age, but looking online, still stuck in that school mentality, but or knowing who to talk to or ask the question, because quite often we feel stupid asking questions about money. I remember asking my dad how much he earned, and he threatened me with a thick ear. Okay, so a child, I'm asking a question about money and I'm threatened with violence. Why would I ask that question again? And then I try again at work and I ask stupidly someone how much they earn, because I'm thinking, I wonder how that compares to my salary. And I was told it was a sackable offence. So okay, I'm going to lose my job if I ask a question about money. It is fundamentally there. I'm learning it's not safe to ask questions. So if someone says, learn about money here, you just thought, oh my God, but thick ear, P45, no thanks, it's all right. I'll go and put the kettle on and go and watch Married at First Sight instead. Yeah, absolutely, because it's just far more easy to do.
Unlocked a memory in my mind. When I was in recruitment, I asked what someone in my office earned, and my boss dragged me into the office and told me, you can't ask what people earn, you're not allowed. And I was like, what do you mean? I'm not allowed. So they're like, that's a sackable offence. You can't ask those questions. Now,
common.
That was like 2009 sort of time. 2025, I don't think it's a sackable offence now, but I don't know.
It might be.
Maybe anyone who's listening to this, if you've been through this conversation recently at work, get in touch, because I'd love to hear from you.
I would love to hear that as well. I keep asking my daughter, can you ask other people that you're working with? And she's like, I can't ask that, Mum. I'm like, have I taught you nothing? Guess you do. Get in there.
So in terms of emotions around money, because I think we apply a lot of emotion to money. In my mind, money's neutral. Money's not actually emotional. It's the perception we apply to it. But I think a lot of people associate money with fear, guilt, shame, joy, adrenaline, power. There's all these different things.
Yeah.
In your experience, what emotions have money created in your life?
Well, so growing up, we didn't have very much money at all. It was very much working class. My dad went to prison when I was 7, so we literally had nothing. Family members were donating what they could afford just to put some cornflakes in the cupboard. So it was very much, shame was a huge feeling, because not only did he go to prison? I went to a school in a local police headquarters was in the village where I grew up. So every other child in the school knew what my dad had done, and they didn't have any issues whatsoever throwing that at me in the playground. So for me, it was a massive issue. And when it came to choosing secondary schools, and I got the opportunity to sit the entrance exam for a private school, but I mean, we had no way of being able to afford to pay, but I jumped at the chance just to get out of that environment. And I got a full scholarship, thank God. I wouldn't have been able to go otherwise, but that was my ticket out of that environment and being surrounded by, but that was my upbringing, really, you know, just being surrounded by that and just not having enough. And then when I was 17 and my mum and dad separated, we were right back there without the shame, but the feeling was the same because we had nothing. Therefore, those memories, and that's part of learning about trauma. So when you experience something, your brain doesn't timestamp it. You remember how it feels. So any other time you feel the same way, you're transported back to being 5, 7, 9 years old. And that's what you carry. You know, we're basically human examples of Russian dolls carrying all these different versions of us, and they're not integrated. You know, we're herding kids like those crocodiles that you see with the kids in a line outside the school. That's what we're all doing when we don't deal with these things that come up and affect us. So the goal is always to reintegrate, but it was only really when I started learning about the impact of money that I understood just how much I was carrying. And then it made more sense. You know, I've always struggled to chase debt in my business. I'd always struggled to send a quote in my business. And all of a sudden I understood why. I'd always found that really difficult to ask for money from someone else. And once you unlock that then as a business owner, it's game changing. It's to be able to go, oh, okay, it's okay for me to chase for invoices that have been unpaid because I've provided a service. So all of that guilt just falls away literally overnight when those things are discovered. But it's like you've just said, you unlock the memory around asking what somebody earned. Yeah. If we don't have awareness and we're not curious around those particular incidents, our brain does not bring it front and centre for us because it hides it. It just sort of stuffs it down and we go about our day. Exactly. Yeah. It's easier to pour a glass of wine and put the telly on instead than face stuff like that because it just feels uncomfortable. Yeah.
So if someone was listening to this now and they're in debt and they've got those emotions around money, which are shame or guilt or fear or, you know, any of that, how does someone go from having that in their life like you did to now being somebody who's confident talking about it, experiencing it? Like, what does that shift look like? Like, how do you physically go and do that? If someone was listening, what would you say would be the first steps to start moving from there to there?
It needs to be baby steps. So in the same way as like if you wanted to lose weight. So I'm attempting off and on, off again, off and in. On again, off again with like weight and fitness and everything else. You can't wake up one morning and go, right, I want to drop 2 stone. And to do that, I'm going to work out 5 days a week. I'm going to do 10,000 steps every day. I'm going to eat this. I'm going to drink this, because we immediately set ourselves up to fail. And we can't wake up on day 2 and expect to have lost all of that weight. And it's the same with this sort of a journey. You know, it takes years for debt to build up typically. So it can take a bit of time to work it back. So having an awareness of where you stand, first of all, is a great place to start, and chipping away. So, you know, just even if it is just starting with opening the bank statements and the credit card statements to begin with, rather than just stuffing them in a drawer or turning off the notifications for things to be sent to the house and just not looking online, because, you know, that's what I did. Easy to just and that's exactly what I did, because, you know, I've been in debt as well, and that was just the easiest thing. Just shred the statements, don't even open them.
Look at it, it's not real.
Yeah. And it's not there. But at the same time, there needs to be a safe way of accessing. I don't feel comfortable facing this. It might be a shame thing. It might be an embarrassment thing, but that's not the first time you've felt that around money. So being able to sort of take a step back and think, okay, well, when have I first started to feel this? And it will be the one memory at a time, like you've just had. You know, it will be like, oh God, yeah, I remember that now. Because then you can process it. Most of the time, those opinions and feelings, they're not yours at all. They're the way you've you've been taught to act or the way you've been taught to deal with the situation. So it's a combination of the practical, I'm not getting away from this. Nobody's coming to save me with this. I do need to pull my pants up a little bit, but you also don't need to do it on your own. You know, sometimes just having somebody like body doubling, if you've got ADHD, you just need to start. And the momentum then builds on its own.
So would you say one of the things, like on a practical level, one of the things that can help people is budgeting?
Yeah, absolutely.
So talk us through that.
So budgeting is a great one, because I think there was one of my clients once said to me, and I said, you know, what's the goal? Why do you want to budget? She said, well, I want to budget so that I don't need to budget. You know, I want to get to a point where I don't need to think about money or worry about the budget. And the example I gave to her was, okay, but Elon Musk has a budget. You might have a big bank account. It's still something that is really useful to do, just so that you've got an awareness of what's going where and what you're then wanting it to what to happen to it in the future. But debt is a big one. So from a budgeting point of view, if you have debt that's costing you money, which it invariably does, and if you've got debt that's on loads of 0% credit cards, well, then you have been dealing with it, because that takes some management. That takes some shuffling around and moving and finding the deals, which is amazing. And that's great. But it's about reducing the cost on things that you don't need to be spending money on. And it's not necessarily about cutting back, although that usually helps, to be honest, you know, that having an awareness of what you've got where, and then a proper, honest review of what you've got coming in and where it goes. Because then with awareness and with a little bit of planning, we can start to divert and redirect, rather than just being carried along on a roller coaster, or the inertia of, well, that's just the way I am with money. You can actually rewrite that story. You can show your brain it's safe to save, even if it's 20 quid a month or something. You know, you can start, or putting a coin in a jar. You know, a client once came to me and said, money literally flows through my fingers like water. I just can't hold on to it. So I said, we're just going to get a jar and we're going to put it on the windowsill in the kitchen. And every time you think that, you're going to put a coin in the jar, even if it's 2p, a 2p coin, because you want your brain to see that you've got something to contradict that story and that constant script that you've got going on. So the key is just starting, and it can just be something so simple, saving a bit, paying a bit more off a debt.
I love the idea of having the jar, because if you've convinced yourself that money flows through your fingers like liquid, and there's something that then catches it, it proves, so the evidence your brain's looking for to prove that it does flow through your hands is contradicted completely in a really visual way. I love that.
Exactly, because it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, and then you just accept it. Oh, well, yeah, oh, haha, no, how bad am I? Look at this. But just so simple. And it doesn't, you know, if you've not got change in the house, tiddlywinks, you know, anything just tangible that you can put in a jar, and just, you know, it's just a trick, like a psychological
retraining,
trick,
isn't it? Retraining.
Sure, so rewiring.
People who are in debt, what's your opinion on whether they should tackle debt or start investing first?
Well, it's a tricky one. And I know that there's lots of different advice out there, which is sometimes part of the problem. You've got some people that you have to be investing. Now, investing, it's that old Chinese proverb of the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time to plant a tree is today. So the sooner you can start with investing, it's never going to be something you're going to regret doing. And the more you put in from an earlier point, obviously the more is going to be there at the end. And then you get that magic compounding effect. However, if you've got something that's debilitating because of the interest that's being charged on debt, or you're not keeping up with repayments, so you've got penalties and stuff that's been added on, it's almost, there needs to be a bit of a balancing act, but it really does depend on the individual. Sometimes it's too much to think, well, I've got to deal with this debt, but I really, really don't understand the investing. And if I'm doing the two together, my brain's just going to explode and it's going to leak all over myself. So I just want to pick one thing to tackle. So if I'm dealing with someone from a coaching perspective, I get to understand what's most important to them. Because if the debt is waking them up in the middle of the night, then that's the first thing we give them the power to tackle. And then we start talking about the investing, and, or maybe we start saving first because that feels safer, because they've got an idea in their head about, well, if I lose it, then I'm going to have nothing. So you just start small with it, but it's almost like a bit of nervous system management, depending on where people are. And then over time, you just build up to it, because once you start, you'll know yourself there is a risk with investing, but you start to see the upside generally quite quickly, and then it becomes a bit of a bug. So we pay down the debt, because then those repayments can be diverted somewhere else if you've no longer got that debt. So they go hand in hand almost, really.
I agree completely, and I think the debt, it will depend on what your debt's costing you. I think that is a definite trigger. And I also think, like what you've said around the savings bit, it's so important to have your emergency fund first, because once you've got your emergency fund, then you start debt and investing. The emergency fund becomes your safety net.
Yeah, otherwise you put stuff on the credit card when the emergency happens, because there's nothing more certain than uncertainty. If the boiler blows or the car fails its MOT, you need money to pay for that. And if you're throwing everything at a credit card and then adding to it each time something goes wrong, you will feel like you're just not getting anywhere. So that's the emergency fund is super, super important.
So
even
as someone
if it's
who
a few £100.
Yeah, 100%. So someone who deals with people who are in these really early stages with money, so debt, savings, starting to invest. If I was somebody who had £1,000 and I've cleared my debt now, I've worked on that, we've done that, I've got my emergency fund, I've got £1,000. How do I make choices to start investing that in a way that aligns with my risk profile as a person? Like, how would you recommend someone starts that process?
Well, first of all, I'm not an IFA, so I wouldn't advise, or I wouldn't specifically say to someone, well, between you and me, I would put my money here.
Yeah.
It needs to feel safe for that individual in the first place. But as a starting point from investing, my favourite place to suggest is like a stocks and shares ISA. And because it's something that you can still potentially get your money back, although there's risks and although it's going to cost you and you're not going to get that gain. It's a great place to start for people to see what then happens when you leave that money there, that you can then add to it. But understanding the risk is super important. It's why there is never ever going to be a cookie cutter off the shelf. This is how you get yourself out of debt. This is how you manage your money, because we just don't know where people are coming from. And that's kind of the trauma-informed side. You have to have an understanding that everybody has got a different starting point, but equally, nobody should be punished or penalised, or, we can't take the mickey out of someone because of what that starting point is either. So coming with absolutely zero judgment is super important to be able to show someone. It's, if you want to ask a question and you feel it's a stupid question, I promise you it isn't, but here's the place 100%. To ask it.
Everyone will have asked it. Anybody who's more successful than me has probably asked the same questions I'm asking now at some point in their careers. And we say it's to clients all the time, there's never a stupid question. And people still get embarrassed to ask, but there's never a stupid question.
But I think because of the way that we do talk about money, and it is about the small, incremental, consistent little steps that you take, sometimes you sit with people and they go, but it can't be that easy. They're waiting or looking for their magic bean or a key to that's what I've been missing my whole life. This is the reason I'm not loaded. And it isn't. There isn't any huge secret at all. It is about those little steps. So that in itself can be quite embarrassing, and people go, oh my God, I actually had no idea. I knew how to do this all along, but I assumed there was more to it. No, there really isn't. It is just about making a start and getting on with it.
I think that's a massive thing you've just said.
The desire, I think, The
desire is one thing, but I think anybody listening to this, what Tanya's just said is so important. There actually isn't a secret. People that are investing money consistently, who are, working in a low risk. We're not talking about traders here. We're not talking about crypto. We're not talking about any of the high volatility stuff. What we're talking about here is the low risk, like levels of investment that really anybody can understand. If you have the desire to want to just scratch the surface on it, there isn't a magic button to press. There isn't a magic bean, to use your words. You don't need to buy an online course for it. You don't need to invest 30 grand in a mentor for it. You can start investment with £10 from your mobile phone today.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Very low risk, very simple. Now, as you want to evolve your skill set, as you want to evolve your exploration into different types of investment, then maybe paying for education is something you want to do. Maybe courses, events, etc. You know, and I run events and I run courses, so like I obviously understand the importance of it. But to start, you don't need that. To start, you can literally get your phone, open a free trade or Hargreaves Lansdown or Trading 212 or one of these platforms, put £10 in and just see what it does.
Exactly that. And those are the two. I've got Hargreaves Lansdown and I have a money box where I manage my ISAs. I've got my pensions and stuff in there. And so and they're quite pretty. They're nice and easy to use. They've got like the time machine functions, especially in the Money Box app. So it's not a recommendation specifically, but it works for me. And, you know, my kids have got them and it's just a great way of dipping your toe in the water. And that Money Box in particular for me was really good in terms of explaining risk when I was trying to explain it to my eldest. She's 21 now, but the way it gives different people different caricatures within the app was a great way for her to be like, oh, okay. And what if my risk attitude changes? Well, absolutely it will. You know, as we get older, things feel like they're more risky or there's more at stake if things go wrong. So absolutely great. You know, and then you can shift as you transition and work your way through that. But again, just asking that question, so many people think that they can't, because we all assume everybody knows what they're doing and we're the only ones that don't. Do you know what? Most people absolutely don't. And so they bury their head in the sand.
Winging it a little bit.
Yeah, of course we are. Of course we are.
So what do you think is the biggest lie that we are told about money?
Biggest lie? Oh, God. Well, it's probably just to work hard to earn more is the biggest one. Keep exchanging time for money is the surefire way to just end up in an early grave, to be honest, and be absolutely thoroughly bored, literally to death, if you get to that point. But and I am coming at that very much from my background, because that was how we learned as we were kids. You know, if we were going on holiday, my dad was a window cleaner. He couldn't get employed when he came out of prison, and so we started a window cleaning round. And if we were going on holiday, you've got the whole, if I'm not working, I'm not earning. Yeah, so he would do a few extra hours before we went away. He would do some weekend cleaning and build up that way so that we could then take time off. So it's very much logically it makes sense, and I can see that that's how my dad did it, so that's what I need to do. And it's very easy to fall into that hustle mentality of, well, I just need to put in a few more hours, right? Because then that will, you know, be able to fill the coffers up a little bit more. But then you get a lifestyle creep that then, well, I've got more, so I'm going to have more and I want to keep up. And that's then what happens. You just sort of, everything goes down.
What can people do about that though? Like, so if you're somebody who doesn't want to start a business, not everybody's entrepreneurial, right? Some people actually want to have a job and switch up at 5 o'clock and be done with go home and not be worried about a business, which is great. And for those people, obviously entrepreneurs, we know as an entrepreneurial person that we kind of become in control of our working patterns. A lot of people still trade time for money, even though they're self-employed. But I guess the principle of starting a business, most people believe that it will give them the freedom that they want, that they can't get from having a job, because there's an opportunity to earn more rather than an employed salary level. But if someone doesn't want to be an entrepreneur, someone wants to be employed, how can they stop relying on trading time for money?
Well, that then falls down to, if you've got a fixed income or semi-fixed income, then you work with what you've got. So not allowing that lifestyle creep to come in. If you're already in that situation, then it's going to take a little bit of rewinding and reworking. But if someone was to come to me from a coaching point of view, the starting point would be to look at someone's values and what's important to them. Because if you don't know what you want, or you don't know where you don't know where you will be when you get where you want to be, you could literally just be going around in circles around the point that you are without actually knowing that you've started to take that trajectory in the right direction. So it takes real conscious effort rather than what your parents expect for you or what all of your friends are doing and expecting to keep. Do people use that term anymore? Keeping up with the Joneses? You know, I think
so.
It's very easy to fall into that trap. And it's hard to go, do you know what? Actually, my car might be 5 years old, but I see no need to change it because it does what I need it to do. Why would I mean, I changed my car myself over the summer and I couldn't get over how expensive cars were because I had my last one for 12 years. I'm just standing in the car lot going, this has doubled my budget. Just standing here looking at the cars. It's just like, it's insane. And then you look at people, and I caught myself looking at people, how have they afforded that? How have they afforded it? And the truth probably is they don't afford it.
They don't afford it.
They make the car payments because it's really important that they look a certain way. So not falling into that trap would be the biggest advice. And that is exactly what I talk to. My youngest is 13, so less of an issue. But then again, I don't think you can be too young to start talking about money and sharing, you know, what we're doing. And kids see what you spend, but kids don't see what you save unless you talk to them about it, because it is done on your app or it's done online on the laptop. It's not something that we shout about, but they see what you're bringing in. They see the car you're driving, the holidays that you're going on, you know, the new stuff, the clothes that are coming into the house, whatever that might be. And they obviously see the lack of it. But it's the sensible stuff that's not sexy, that people don't talk about, that kids don't see if we're not sharing that with them.
So do you think the magic trick to changing the way the financial world sits with the majority is to just talk about it more?
I think it's a brilliant starting point. Short of changing the education system and being the Jamie Oliver for finances in schools as what he did for school lunches, it has to start at home. It has to become part of the everyday, and it has to start with not shying away from those conversations about money and how much does that cost, and not threatening your child with a thick ear. I mean, for God's sake. But that just says more about him than anything else. But you know, if we shine a light on everything, it becomes less of an issue. But people would rather talk about their sex life than talk about money and earnings. I was at a talk a couple of weeks ago at a military base. And that was my opening question was, I want you to turn to the person sitting next to you and ask them how much they earned. And, you know, the shock in the room and, oh my God, I can't ask that question. But it immediately got people laughing and then talking because nobody was sharing that information.
That's so fascinating. That's such a good opening question, Tanya, for a room of people. Really good question.
Always in my back pocket.
So listen, I could chat to you about this for a really long time. Obviously, we don't have an unlimited amount of time. So at the end of every episode, we always ask our guest a question that's been left by our last guest. So I'm going to ask you the question we were left by a chap called Dylan, who was my last interview. What is a money cycle that you've worked really hard to break?
Money cycle. Well, I guess for me, there's been a few. Not wanting to repeat the cycle that my mum was in when my dad left. So not wanting to be in a relationship where I was relying on a man. And hey, I ended up in that situation anyway. But I have now got out of it, I suppose. But the one that I work the hardest on now is sharing that money journey with my girls, my two girls. I don't want them to ever be in a situation that I was in. I would want them to be able to, first of all, walk away of their own merit, but also, second of all, be able to pick the phone up and say, Mum, I need some help, or can I talk to you about something? Because I didn't feel I had that either. So for me, it's quite personal, I suppose.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And then we always, as the very last question, is ask you to leave a question for our next guest. So what is your question?
Now, my question would be, on a strictly professional level, because I think this could be misread or misanswered otherwise, what was too much for the money in your experience? Or what have you done in your life which retrospectively you felt was too much for the money you got paid?
Interesting question. Really good question.
That's why it needs to be professional. You might not be able to wear it.
We'll see where this podcast takes a slight detour. Brilliant. Thank you, Tanya, so much for that. I really appreciate it. How can people get in touch with you if they want to follow and listening to this podcast?
So the best way to find me, my website is financialwingwoman.com. I've got my own little podcast. I've only started it a couple of months ago. That's called Breaking Financial Chains, or looking for Financial Wing Woman or Tanya Ibberson on the socials. You'll find me there.
Right. We'll make sure all of those links are in the show notes so that people can get hold of you. Thank you so much for your time, Tanya. I really appreciate it. It's been great speaking to you.
It's been, and to you. It's been great to catch up as well.
Thank you so much for getting to the end of the podcast episode. I really hope that you enjoyed it. I just wanted to take this opportunity to remind you that the weekly Money Mechanics newsletter is available to you completely free. This is a newsletter that I'm going to send out every week to just give you some ideas around what's happening in the markets, what's happening at a global level, what's happening at a lot more local level, so that you can better understand what you can do with your money to make it work for you for the future. I'm also going to share in the newsletter what I'm doing in my own portfolio, just to give you some insights into what my ideas are, why I'm making the decisions that I'm making, in the hope that it will help you to make those decisions in your own portfolios as well. All you've got to do is find the link that's with this episode, hit the link and subscribe, and that newsletter will start to come out to you every single week. I'd also really love to take this opportunity to invite you to drop me a review. I love the opportunity of getting to share these podcast episodes with you. It really helps me to better understand how we can do the best job that we can here at Money Mechanics if you tell us your feedback. So drop us a review, tell us the sort of guests that you want, talk to me and connect with me on Instagram, talk to us on YouTube, wherever you are hanging out. Tell us how you're finding it, and we can make this the very best podcast it can be. Thank you again for being such a valued listener. I appreciate you all, and I'll speak to you soon.